Well, hello and happy Friday. Running a little late, had a couple technical difficulties, but here we are now, and looking forward to starting to create a new block theme today. We're Last week we worked together, or I worked with you all. Thanks for anybody that came back after last week's stream. And welcome to anyone that's new. And I am seeing that somebody cannot hear me. So let me see if I can figure out why that is. My sound is very low. Okay. Thank you for sharing that. I'm going to raise that up. Is that any better? How am I sounding right now? Okay, great. All right. Yeah, so technology, it's super fun. So last week we looked at like just what block themes are. We looked at the create block theme plugin. We installed and activated Gutenberg on a development site. And the plan is that we're going to use Gutenberg activated and kept up to date with the current released version so that we can like participate in new things as we go along in creating these threads. And now I have an echo, so let me try something else. All right, so I'm gonna see if this is any better. Do I sound better now? So someone did not have an echo, someone did have an echo. Echo is fixed. Okay. I'm using Crisp now. Crisp is like a filter to cut out background noise. So I've sometimes had weirdness with it making me sound a little robot-y, so we'll see how it goes. And all right, so today I'm hoping to like start creating an actual theme. So I'm gonna switch over to my screen share. We'll see if this is readable for everyone. I don't know yet if it's better to have a dark theme or a light theme, but we're gonna try this for right now. So, and I can maybe make the text a little bit bigger, that might help. Let's try that. Okay, so on the right, we have the index.html file open from the 2023 theme, which is a block theme that is shipped with WordPress right now as the default theme. And I'm going to use some of this to create to move code over into my starter template. And then once I have just a couple of things in there, then I'm going to move over to WordPress and start looking at what this looks like at the WordPress side, at the site editor side. So there are a couple things I want to have. So we will want a template part, which is the first thing in this file, but I'm going to just start with just a paragraph. So the way that a paragraph's content looks is, let's see if there's even one in here. There might not be. Let's see. I'm going to start with this commented out, and I'm going to say paragraph. And then I'm gonna put in an opening paragraph tag. And then do hello world. And then I'm gonna close this out. Let's see. I wish it were a little easier to type these. I think that this is something that we'll get some tooling in time, and we'll be able to like auto complete things, which would be helpful. There might be some stuff out there. I'll go digging and see if there's anything we can experiment with in the future. But for today, basically, I just wanted to have something that's going to show up. So if I go ahead and save this, and by the way, everything I put into my code here today, I'm going to upload to a GitHub repository, and I'll try to get the link into the description for the stream, and this video will also be very lightly edited. Like all that first technical problems at the beginning, I'll probably cut out, and then put it up to YouTube as well for long-term access. All right, so what I want to do now is get open WordPress and be able to work with that. All right, so let's expand this. Here's my live stream site. Okay, and I would like to go to WP admin, and it's probably going to open somewhere that I don't want it to, or maybe it won't. Okay, here we go. All right, so now we're in our site. Let's, I haven't logged into this since last week, so let's see what we have for updates. Oh, look, a new Gutenberg. It looks like it's just a point release. There was probably, there was a bug fix, I think, that needed to go out. So we're going to go ahead and keep that up to date. And I'm going to go in here, and I have the boilerplate theme, which we worked on last week a little bit, created from the Create Block Theme plugin. But the one that I want to do is this Daisy on WP Starter. That's the theme that I'm going to create to start with here. All right, and that's activated. And so when I go to the front end, if I did my job right, the only thing we're going to see is Hello World. So let's see if I did that right. There it is. So that all we have in our template right now is that one block. It's just a paragraph block. It's very simple. I could have just as easily just put in like just the paragraph tag, but we want to try to use the block structure because that's the way that block themes work. So so now we don't want to just have a site that says hello world on the front. The whole point of the theme is to bring in the content that we save in our posts and our pages and templates and parts and everything all dynamically in to show on our site. So what we're working with is our index, and the purpose of an index file is to be the fallback. It's to be the ultimate file that's going to be used if there's nothing more specific for the view that a viewer or a visitor is trying to access. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and start working with this. So when we go into the site editor, let me back that up and explain. I went into from appearance and then editor, and it has this red beta. I don't know exactly how long that's going to stay, but for now, it's still a beta feature. It gets a little bit better every release. And here we have our template editor. Now, one thing to note is that while I have Gutenberg installed and activated, the plugin, there are things in the user experience, the user interface that might look a little bit different or not be available if you just have core WordPress installed without that Gutenberg plugin. So that's just something to be aware of. So this is what this looks like. It brings us into this view that's basically like a preview of the site. And in order to start editing it, we have to actually click edit. So that's a bit of a change from previous where you could actually start editing as soon as you hit the site editor. It wasn't the best. So this has some good and bad too, I guess, but I like that I can kind of expand and collapse, and then the W icon kind of does different things depending on where you're at in the flow. So it'll be interesting to see if that changes a little bit as people have a chance to use it and give feedback about how easy that is to use, or if it's confusing or whatever. So it's all functional though. So I'm going to go back into edit again. So that gets rid of the sidebar. So I have a nice full screen view to work with. And it shows me in the center of the top that I'm working on my index. So I can go here to browse all templates, but I'm just going to work with the index for right now. So let's say I'm going to create my first template. And what do I actually want to have in this template? Well, being the fallback, I probably want to have things like my post title. I want to be showing a list of posts, basically. That's the ultimate fallback for an index, typically. So what I'll do is I can actually remove this here. I'm going to open up list view. It makes it a little easier to work with these blocks. We can either, once we have the blocks selected, and I find it a lot easier to select these blocks from list view rather than in the editor itself. It's going to put a blue border around the outside, so I know that it's been selected, and then it shows me this little toolbar that are the quick access settings for this particular block. So things like bolding and italicizing and adding a link are things. Another thing that I'm going to want is this little square with the line sidebar looking icon is settings. I think it used to be a gear. So I'm quite certain it used to be a gear, but it's been changed to this so that we know that we can open up the block sidebar, which has tabs. We have template and block. If we go to template, it's going to show us information and settings about the template we're editing. And if we go to block, it's going to show us the settings for the block that's selected. And if you have any questions as we go along through this, please drop them in the chat, and I'd be happy to address them when it seems the right timing within what I'm hoping to accomplish today. So let's see if we can get a little bit of a real world example. Simple, but real world. So what I want to do here, and know that I know that I'm missing my header and my footer and a sidebar and containers and all of that. But for right now, let's just start with the query loop. The query loop, if you're familiar with classic WordPress theming, is like the loop function that you would put in all of your arguments, and you would decide what was going to go in it with template tags in PHP, and you'd have to include it in every template file. It's the same thing here, except that we are using it in a block form. So the actual markup is going to look a lot different compared to the PHP code that we would have used previously. And the easiest way right now to set these templates up is going to be here from the site editor. All right. So so I went ahead and added my query loop here, and it's giving me an option to either choose from a pattern. There are some predefined patterns, which are groups of blocks that are partially pre-configured, or I can start blank. Let's go ahead and we'll probably do it both ways, but let's start blank. And what we get here is a new option to select a variation. And these are kind of like minimal groups of blocks with less design controls already baked in. It's basically, what blocks do you want to include? And here are some options. So we can select from here to get us a quick start, and then we can manipulate it from there. If we chose the pattern option, the other, then it would give us like a pretty view of the things that are already styled to some degree. So, but for this starter theme, I actually don't want any of that. A starter theme, I want to be as minimal as possible. It's mostly about getting the building blocks in place and not about getting the design in place, because the design will be done in future themes for a specific theme that I want to create in the future. So for right now, I'm going to say I'm probably going to get a good, like pretty comprehensive group of blocks in here ultimately, because I think it might be a little easier to remove blocks from the starter theme rather than to add them. So with that in mind, here is my first query loop. And let's look at what came in with that. So we have in our list view, we can see we have our query loop, which is the container block. That's the outer block. And it's a special block in that it's a special container block in that it's going to like repeat as many times as it needs to. Or rather, at least the post template portion of it will. We have our post template, which it's going to show anything that returns for this query that's being pulled in for this index file is going to return the post featured image, a post date, and a post title. So if it's just a single view, we would just get the one, it would just display one time. If it was an archive view or any kind of like a home page where the latest posts are showing, it would show them repeated however many times it's configured. So probably 10 is the default. Yeah. And then we have a pagination block. So if there's more posts than will fit on this page, using the post per page setting, then it'll show us these numbers. And then we have some text if nothing is available. So we can actually edit this text. It says add text or blocks that will display when a query returns no results. So let's say if I have my no results, let's say I wanted to have a paragraph. That just added the wrong thing. Let's try that again. Okay. Let's see. No results. So I'm going to say no results found. Would you like to search? And then I can add a search here. And maybe I would, rather than this being a paragraph, maybe I'd actually prefer it to be a heading. Maybe I'll center that. And then we'll start from there. It's not pretty, but that's not the space that we're in right now. We're looking for functional rather than pretty. So now I've got my query loop with some really basic settings or basic blocks, and I've got my pagination with previous and next page and also page numbers. So that's the basics. So if I save this, what it's going to do is save it to, it'll save to the database. So it's going to be live on my site. It's still going to be using everything else from my active theme files, but the index is now going to be pulling from my own site. So if I were to take my theme and move it someplace else, this would not come with it because it's not stored in the files for the theme. And we'll fix that at some point. So now our original Hello World template, if we reload this, well, now we still see Hello World. So why is that? That should not be the case. It's definitely saved. Oh, it's added the date and it says Hello World. So let's see if there's something I did wrong here. Oh, the name of the post is Hello World. That's hilarious. Why don't we add, I'm going to do is there's a plugin if you're creating Actually, no. Let's try going and checking out this brand new thing that has just been added in recently. Let's see. I haven't tried it yet, so I believe that there's a way to preview your code or your site with the blocks. So let's see. Oh, here it is. Open style book. So what I did was I'm in the site editor. I went to this black and white circle, or it depends. It might be blue and white or black and white, depending on whether or not it's selected. And then there's this little eyeball. It's the style book. So if I open the style book, basically what's going to do is show me all of the blocks that are available in the site with this theme, including that in that template, populated. So, so if you want to see what your theme is going to look like with all of these different blocks, this is an amazing new thing that'll be that's in Gutenberg now. That's going to make theme development and site building so much better because it's kind of like a unit test, but you can just see it. You don't have to install anything. You don't have to add content to the site to do it. You can just see what all these defaults are. It's new. It may still need some work, but it's a great way to do this. This is hilarious. Custom HTML with a with a marquee. So you don't see those very often anymore. Okay, theme. So if you have theme specific things, here's some things: navigation, site logo, site title. Cool. Uh, anyway, so back here, I think what I want to do though, since it's going to be a little easier to demonstrate things that are in the template with some content on the site, what I'm going to do is install a new plugin. Let's see if I can remember what it's called. There's a plugin that I've used before that will create dummy content, and it actually might have been called dummy. Um, there it is, dummy content generator. I'm pretty sure this is the one that I've used before. Oh, actually, I'm wrong. Faker Press. That's the one. I don't know why I thought it was called dummy. Faker Press is something I've used before. One thing to note is that the posts that this is going to create are all going to use classic blocks, but that's okay because we can work around that. So now I will go in. I've installed it, activated it, and I'm going to go into settings, and this is a cool feature: erase faked data. We can use this quote from Frozen for some reason to type in this phrase and then delete the content that the plugin creates. So we are going to say so I can say I want to have like between 5 and 10 posts. And it's going to randomize it. So it won't necessarily, let's say I want 20. That way we get pagination. That's the idea there. We're going to say we want the posts to all be sometime we'll say in the last year. So from January 1st, 2022 until the end of this month. And I want both posts and pages. Don't need any parents, that's fine. We're going to use a bunch of HTML in it. I like the lorem pixum rather than placeholder because these are real images instead of like placeholder images. And Let's see, is there anything else I want to do here? That's right. It's a little bit, it's actually generating a bunch of lorem ipsum content, but it's also pulling in images from this lorem ipsum service and storing them locally. Maybe it's done. Yep, I asked for 20 posts, did 15 in 5. Looks like it gave me 10 published posts and a bunch of pages. So that's enough to work with. So now let's see what happens if we refresh the home page. Hey, that's better. Okay, now we have a bunch of content. It's pretty gnarly, but it gives us our list. There are things here that I definitely can see already that we're going to need to edit. So, for one thing, these posts don't link anywhere. So if this were like a homepage, legitimately a homepage, we probably would want the post titles to link to the single view. So that is a setting, I think. Let's see. Post title settings. So this is also a new thing in the sidebar where the styles and the settings are split into tabs. This is an experimental feature that I enabled when I activated the Gutenberg plugin last week. But when we go into the post title block settings, I can do make title a link, and I can choose if I need it to have a rel attribute and whether or not I want it to open a new tab. So I do not want it to open a new tab, but I do want it to be a link. So now you see that the design changed to look like a link, and the hover changed as well. And let's say I wanted this to also be my single view. Well, right now we don't have content in here. So probably what I would want to do is add a new block. And what we're looking for here is posts. Oh, these are patterns. So I want to go to blocks and I want to go to theme blocks. And I would like this to have the post content, which is here, post content. And now it added that block in, but it kind of put it in a weird place. So I want it to be nested in within the post template because otherwise it's not within my loop area and it would only show the post content for the wrong thing. So with that in mind, now I've got I can see here I've got my first post, which is the post that WordPress installs with. Hello world, welcome to WordPress. This is your first post. Let's say I wanted to show a little distinction between these because right now they all just kind of look smushed together. I could also, I'm going to use this insert after option to get this in here. I can add a separator and maybe make it a wide line or dots. Let's use dots. And we'll save that. And now when I go back here, well, now I get my archive view, and now we've got these dots that are showing in between the posts. I would love to take any questions that you're coming up with. Given that this is a coding exercise, let's take a minute and look at the code that makes up this template. Right now, this is all just sort of my database, but as a theme developer, what I would probably do is periodically take anything that I've done in the site editor and slurp it into my theme. That's a technical term, slurp. So under appearance, this create block theme plugin is what I'm going to use to do this. You want to make sure that the changes that you want to make are really what you want to put to your files, because this is going to overwrite anything in my themes files. So if you don't want to do that, you can clone. That would create a brand new theme with all of your stuff integrated. But I'm just going to go for it and overwrite. So it says save user changes as theme changes and delete the user changes. So it's going to take everything that I saved in the database that's theme related, the stuff that I did in the site editor. It's going to remove that and then push the code out to the theme. So I'm going to go ahead and generate that. And then now it's all just in my theme files. So if I go back to this editor now and I go into templates, and then manage all templates. Before, I had this index that was added by my theme. That's what this is indicating. And then it had a little blue circle, a little blue dot. And that blue dot was indicating that there have been changes made. So the information that's being pulled in is actually from the database rather than the theme. But now that's gone. So we know that the original theme files are being used. So if I go back into my code here, so remember when we were at this view before, it was just a paragraph. And now we see all this information. So now we can see all of the blocks that are being used to generate that view. We have, there's some of it's a little hard to read. We could format this so that it's easier to, is a little more human readable. This is the way that the block markup is pushed out. So our very first block, and you can see a block is going to be started anytime we have, let me just select the bit that will kind of highlight all of our blocks. So if we see the open bracket, exclamation point dash dash, that's how we open up an HTML comment. And then we have a space and then WP colon, and that's going to say, okay, I have a WordPress block colon. And so we can see that these are all the core blocks that we're using. You'll see that this does not show where they close. That would look a little different because some of them close inline and some of them close as a separate tag. And that's not a problem. As long as they are all closed properly, you shouldn't run into trouble. So we have a query block, a post featured image block, a post date block. And so one thing you may see is that a lot of these, most of the blocks that you put into a block theme are not going to have any content. They are not going to have a lot of strings that you need to work with, because they are dynamic. They are dynamic blocks. So let's go ahead and walk through some of these. So we have our query. This is giving all of the instructions to WordPress about how the query should come in. So we have a query ID of 0. I'm actually not 100% sure how WordPress is using this, but I think that you could have multiple queries per page, and that's probably, it would give it a different ID for each query that loads in the same template. And then this query is going to have a per page of 3. So we have 3 posts per page. An offset would be, do you want to skip a post or 3 posts? So if you say had very common with a magazine style theme, you might start off with like featured posts, and then you make a slightly different style for the next few posts, and then you go down to like a minimal view for the posts after that. But each post is only being shown once. this would be the way that you do this. So you could say, well, my first query pulled in 3 posts and I don't want to show those again. So my second query loop block is going to be offset by 3. So it starts from the 3rd post and continues on. That's the idea there. We have our post type that's being pulled in here is for posts. We have order descending and order by date and then author. And then there's search. There's no search term, which is probably best for this. We are not excluding anything. We are sticky is set to empty, which means default, and inherit false. So we're not inheriting the template layout from the parent block, which in this case there isn't one because the query is the outermost block. Actually, I got that backwards. Inherit false is going to apply to the inner blocks. So the inner blocks will not inherit the template layout from this block. We can change all of that. So the easiest way to change all of these parameters is in the site editor. It's the safest way to do it. If you're familiar with block markup, you can edit things here and add additional parameters. But if you make a mistake, there isn't anything that's going to tell you what it was. All right, so then we have these few very simple blocks that don't really have a lot of information being passed to it, which means it's just using whatever the defaults are. So we have our post featured image, we have our post date, post title, and post content. That's all going to be pulling information from the database. So we don't have to include that information because WordPress is going to handle that for us. And then we have our separator block, which this one is kind of like a paragraph where we have our information about the block. So we know that this is a separator block, but there's also HTML inside of that, and that will allow that HTML to persist even if there isn't anything to work with this other information. Moving down, we have query pagination previous, pagination numbers. So in this case, we have this container block. So it's a block that goes around the other blocks. And we have our query pagination wrapping around those 3 blocks that are related to pagination. So we don't necessarily have to include all 3 of these. If we just wanted a next and previous, we could just wipe this one out and it would all still work. And then we go into the block for no results. Now this one is a little bit different because we entered in this no results found, would you like to search string. This string was saved as part of the block. This is fine if you have a site that's only ever going to be in a single language, but if you want to have it so that it can be translated, then you would need to do this in a different way because this is not translatable using a string translation like WordPress would typically do. And WP search, that's where I had the search block. And then that closes the no results, and then we close out the query. So that is our template. We don't have a header or footer yet, and maybe that would be the next place we might want to go. So let's move back over here. Do we have any questions at this point? If not, that's all good. Here, let's demonstrate this. I added this link to the post. If I go here and link in, it's going to look about the same. Okay, I think I know what I need to do here. We're going to go in and edit that index again. And we're going to go to query loop. And I think I said the wrong thing before, and it was when I said the inherit false was about the layout, it wasn't. It was about the query. So I am going to go ahead and set this to inherit from the query from the template That way, I think, hopefully, when I go back here and look at the single view, then it's only going to show me that first post. Let's look at a better example. We've got this one down here, which is the one with the image and more content. So interestingly, the no results found, would you like to search, is actually showing, and so is the search box. So let's see if we can dig into that. I don't know why that's not working. Should only be showing up if there's nothing in being returned by the query. I don't know if that's a bug or user error. It could be either, to be honest. Probably need to do some digging into that to see if it might be something that I have done wrong. But one thing that makes me think it might be a bug is that my pagination on my single view is not showing. So it knows that there aren't any other posts to display. So that's not here. And since there were results found, these blocks should not actually be showing up. So let's go back to the home page and see if that's still showing at the bottom here. Bottom, no, it's not. Fascinating. Yeah. So I think that when we add a singular template, this problem's going to go away. It's not going to be an issue any longer. So there's, let me throw this. There's a question. I'm gonna test this out here. I just added this yesterday so that I can overlay your questions onto the screen. So any text hard-coded in the editor is not translatable, correct? Yes. So if it's a string that is hard-coded into HTML string, then that is not translatable. Something like Google Translate in the browser would still translate it, but as far as like translating your entire site from one language to another, like if you were using a translation plugin, no, that would not be translatable. And if you were to create a translation file for your theme, you would need to be doing that in a different way, which the way that it's been worked around is to, if you need to have a string in your theme itself, then you would put those into patterns, which are PHP files, and you can put PHP into those files to wrap the translation functions around those strings, so then they would get a domain and then they would be translatable. Right. All right, so let's next move in. We kind of like talked about like this most basic index template that we could have. Let's go ahead and add in a header template part. So template parts are stored separately. There are a lot of things that you can do here that would allow you to have your content or your templates extremely modular. So if you knew that, for example, this layout here with the query loop, if we knew we were going to want to use it on a whole bunch of different templates, exactly the same way, kind of like a reusable block is in the content editors, then you could actually save it as a part and use it multiple places. But we're just going to start with our header, which is also one that we will use multiple places. So we'll have a primary header template part, And that's going to be used across probably all of our templates in this case. We probably would not have multiple template header parts in a starter theme unless I wanted to have options with them pre-configured different ways. So I'm going to save myself a little bit of time. And instead of going to the blocks and creating an empty template part, I am going to create the template part here. So if I search part in the blocks list, I can choose header, footer, or template part. If it is intended to be a header, you want to choose header. If it's intended to be a footer, you want to choose footer. And if it's intended to be anything other than those two, you would want to choose template part. So I am making a header, so I'm going to choose header. Okay. And if I go back to my site view, it put my header at the bottom. I actually want it to go at the top, so I just drag it up. And now it's giving me the option, similar to when we added the query loop block, to either choose from a pattern, list of patterns, or start blank. And I'm going to choose a pattern. So what it's going to do is going to give me this modal that will show me some options of different patterns that might work for this. So see if I search header. I don't love the patterns that it gave me, actually. Simple header inside of an image, a centered header, so this one might be not too bad. Simple header with a background color, simple header with an image, simple header with tagline. That's the one I think I'm going to go with. So I'll go ahead and insert that. And now I've got my template part is called simple header with tagline. And here are the blocks that pattern added. I accidentally unnested that. It's interesting. It duplicated that instead of interesting. I don't know. I accidentally dragged the group out of the template part, and it seems to have duplicated the whole thing. So I don't want to have that separate one. I just only want it to be in one place. So I've got a group block, which kind of like wraps around the whole thing. I've got a row, which allows things to go across the screen. And then there's another row, so nested rows. You think about, if you think about these groups, rows, and stacks as containers, like you would have your divs in a more traditional classic theme in your markup to give your site the structure that it needs. That's what's happening here. So, but we say a group is like just a generic border around it. It's not a border, it's like a wrapper. And then we have rows, which are intended to show blocks as horizontal. And then you can actually also transform it to a stack, which is intended to show your blocks in a vertical A. So we have row, and then within this row, we have site logo, and then another group. And then in that group is site title and tagline. So this allows us to have this site logo next to both of these. And this group, we could actually make it a stack instead. So either way is fine. And then we have a basic navigation block. And this is showing a whole bunch of stuff right from the get-go. So it's giving me a page list as the default. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it like that. I don't feel like I need to change it right now. Probably you wouldn't want this many items in your menu, in your header, but it's really more of a placeholder, because once this theme is installed on an active site, a site with real content, then it's going to use the page list for that. So in theory. So this is a comment from the chat. It would be cool to allow us to rename or append a name to our groups and query loops or any block. So yes. So do you mean, so to clarify, are you saying it would be cool if you could see a name that was different in this list view sidebar? I think so. Tell me if I got that wrong, but um, you kind of can if you go into settings and advanced and you give, I think that there was a way to do this. Ooh, where did it just go? Group. I think that there's been discussion about this. Here we go. We can give it an HTML anchor. And now, if we give it that HTML anchor, it's going to do two things. Functionally, on the front end of your site, there's going to be an anchor in your HTML that you could link to. But visually for yourself, it will show you that anchor in the sidebar. So you have to just know that right now it's not a and or. It's an and, not an or scenario. So you would get both things. So if you use the HTML anchor, then you would also get to see that. So this is a thing that, okay. So if you have a header on your site and you want to make sure that the accessibility features know what to do with it, you need to make sure that the template part is using the header tag. So default based on Aereo for this is header. I found at one point, and it looks like this has been improved since this time, because when I created my template part at that point, and this was months ago, it didn't select header automatically. And because of that, it didn't show me my go-to or skip to content link. So now we have this, we can go ahead and save this. This is something to point out. This is saving all of the things that we made changes to that are individual items. It's telling me what they are. So I have a template involved here. I have a template part involved here, and I have a navigation menu involved here. And these are all saved in different ways. So it's letting me pick and choose which things I want to save from the changes that I made. And I'm going to say save all. So, and now if I go back to this home page again, I should go to the top, now have my header in place. And I can do the same thing for a footer. So let's go ahead and quick add a footer in. Go here. We're going to say footer. It was that, go to list view, and now I have my footer. And I could choose a footer, and we just have a couple of things available to us. And I'm just going to choose this really simple, probably powered by WordPress one. So now then that can be changed here. And all right. So now we have a functional index. If I go back into templates now, this is what I was talking about before with the database saved settings. We see this blue dot here. So we know that there are customizations that have been applied to this template that are not saved to the files. And then now if we go into template parts, before there would have probably been nothing in there. Well, that's interesting. So it looks like it saved my header and my footer as empty, and then it created these as separate template parts. So that's interesting. So if I go into manage all template parts, I could actually, oh, I know why. It's because I had created the files. Haha. So there were empty files in there. And now we have right align footer and simple header with tagline. So if I go back to the appearance and then create block theme, and I overwrite my settings again and go into the code again, direction, okay. And if I go into parts, now we see we have right align footer HTML, simple header with tagline.html, and then these were the ones that I created that were empty. So I can delete those. And just leave them. So if I go back to my index file now, we can see that we added this template part block. And so that's been saved here as well. And so it's the template part, and then it tells it which template part to look for. And it uses the file name, the slug, which is simple dash header dash with dash tagline. Okay. Now we have some code that we've created. So before we wrap up for today, I wanted to just take a look at theme.json, which is an important part of this. Before we start doing any real significant design work on this theme. So we're not going to do a lot, but I think we at least want to make it a contained design. We want it to not necessarily be full screen. So there, you might sometimes want that, but even if you want that, you can still use the container blocks to go around it in order to give the whole thing some structure. So in my theme.json file right now, I've just included a couple things. One is the version, and then the other is the schema definition of the URL where our schema is actually located. So if I go ahead and follow this link, looking here, it's going to load up a JSON file. And this is all the instructions for how theme.json works. So you don't necessarily need to know everything that's in here, but basically it's going to allow us to have autocomplete and tooltips and such. So if I start typing, and you have to kind of be working within the way that the syntax needs to be for JSON to be valid. So what I did there was I added a comma at the end to say, okay, I'm going to do a new thing. And then I open up my quotation marks, and it's trying to help me out with adding closing characters and such. But as soon as I have those quotation marks there, it's going to say at this level of this file, here are the things that you have available to you. And so I have custom templates, I have patterns, settings, styles, template parts, and title. Because I have created template parts in this theme already, I'm going to start there. So the JSON schema knows that template parts should be an array. So it added the array characters for me, which are these square brackets. So, and if I hover over that, then it gives me a tooltip that says additional metadata for template parts defined in this parts folder. So the template parts that are in this folder, in the parts folder for this theme, we're going to give it some information about those. So, And I don't remember how this is supposed to look. So we're going to open up an existing file. Oof. I don't want that open. We're going to go into 2023, I think, where I know there will be something. I'm going to open the theme.json in here. Okay, so, and then I'm going to look for the parts section of this file. It should be. Oh, all right. So I was right the first time. I've got to open up the curly brackets, and then I can say area, header, and then I can give it a name, which is going to be the slug from the theme. So my header is called make this bigger so I can see the whole thing. Okay, simple header with tagline. Now, probably for a starter theme, what I'd really want is just this to be called header. So, and I will probably change that at some point. But for today, this is what it's called already. So, and then I can give it a title. And the title is what's going to show in the site editor. So right now, it's going to say simple header with tagline, all lowercase with the dash in it, which should be the case if I go back over here and go into editor and then template parts. See how it says simple header with tagline, all lowercase, because we have not given it a title. So if I give it a title now and just call it header, and save that, and then I can come over here and reload. That changed to header. So that's how it's going to be defined. So that's one template part. And now we have another template part. So we do curly brackets. We're going to call it area, footer, name, name, right, align, footer, and title, footer. And now if we go over here, my template parts are going to say header and footer. So it's just a label. It's the actual names of those template parts are still the full bit. And that's how they are called into the template. If we go back into the template here, we would see the template parts name. The slug is simple header with tagline and right aligned footer. So if we change the names of the files, then we also need to update theme.json, and we need to update these references in the templates, because otherwise this template, it wouldn't find it because it's using the file name to identify it. Okay, so that's template parts. So these are all top level things. The other top level things that we have are custom templates, which we have not created any of yet. We'll come back to that another time. Patterns, which the patterns is going to pull in patterns from the public pattern directory, which is a community-driven effort where patterns are submitted to a directory on the WordPress network, and then you can pull them in. So these would be kind of give priority. You can search for any patterns that are out there from within WordPress, but if you have a theme and you want to have specific patterns that exist, either you submitted them or someone else submitted them into the pattern directory, you can give them priority to kind of pull them to the top to say, hey, these are patterns that work well with this theme, basically. And then you could also register your own local patterns, which would be done in a different way. That wouldn't be done in here. Then we have settings, which we're going to get into. Styles and title, I think, is used mostly for style variations, which is something we'll talk about in the future. So the only other thing that I wanted to do today was to get in some settings. And mainly I want to enable appearance tools. um, so, so appearance tools, if I hover over this, it's going to tell me what it does. It enables border, color, radius, style, width, link colors, spacing options for block, gap, margin, and padding, and line height for typography. So by enabling that, it just bulk enables all of those. All of these things, they're like 8, 9 of them, because each one under those bullet points is with a comma separated are a single setting. You can enable or disable them all individually as well, but this is just a quick way to enable things. And that will just make it so I can access these features from the block settings, which I'm probably going to want at least some of them when we start really refining this into a usable theme. All right, so I believe everything is working now. And let's just confirm that. So we have our header, we have our content, which is the query loop. And if I all the way to the bottom, then we have our footer showing up. And if I link into a single post, we have our single post and also this silly thing. So I think the last thing I'm going to do, and do one more thing, is I'm going to replicate this template into a singular.html. So I'm just going to take index.html. I'm going to copy. I'm going to paste. Paste. And I'm going to rename this to be singular. Okay. And so now I have I'm using the exact same template and calling a singular. And now if I go into my site editor here, I don't want to do that. I'm going to go back, templates. I got to do a hard refresh here. Okay, singular. And now if I edit this, I'm going to do this really fast. So basically I want to pull all of these things out of the post template. So it's going to be all the same blocks, but I don't need pagination. I don't need no results. So I can remove that. So now I've got, and I don't need the separator, remove. Okay, so I've got my post featured image, my post date, my post title, and my post content. And if I save this, now when I go to a single post, it's gonna show me all of the same information in theory. This might also have this is not. Oh, okay. So it's got a featured image at the top, and also it's got an image in the content. So probably in most cases, you would not use a featured image on your single view. So I'm going to do that and reload. And now I just have my content. It's not beautiful, but it is working. If I go back to the home page, and then I still have my featured images and the content. showing up. So this, now I have two templates. I have my index template, which is going to work for all of my archive type things. And I have a singular, which should work for all of my single item views. So it's not that they aren't the only files that we're going to want in our theme, but it is a working theme at this point. So, and I will, let me go ahead and grab the link of my GitHub repo. Let's see. And it's saved here somewhere. Go. I'm gonna throw this into the chat so anyone that's still here might be able to use it now. And in a few minutes, that should be updated with a new branch for today's stream. So there's a branch for last week's stream, a branch for this week's stream, and then I'm going to merge everything into the trunk branch as well. So if you'd like to download what it is the themes and plugins directories for the site that I'm working on. So if we do end up at some point with plugins, then those will be there as well. So I am going to call this done for today, but thanks so much for joining me, and I hope to see you all next week.